During college break, I wanted to go to my childhood bedroom. "Don't go in there," my mom said.
"It's just for storage now,"
my dad added. He looked nervous. Later that day, I went in anyway and saw this. 5 minutes later, I called 911. I didn't expect much. Just sleep, honestly. I came home with a headache and a half-dead phone, thinking about my old bed and the cheap lavender candle I left on the windowsill last summer. It was late. Not dramatic late, just dark and quiet. My parents opened the door like nothing was weird. My mom said hi. My dad joked about how heavy my suitcase was. I nodded, followed them in, and tried to remember how many hours of sleep I'd lost that week. Probably 10 too many. Everything seemed fine. That was the strange part. There was no tension, no arguing, no sideways looks, just a clean hallway and the faint smell of laundry detergent. I said, "I'm just going to drop my stuff in my room," without thinking. That's when my mom said, "Don't go in there." It was immediate, a little too fast. Then my dad added, "It's just for storage now." He looked nervous, not alarmed, just uncomfortable, like he didn't know what version of this conversation we were about to have. I froze a little, not because it was a big deal, just because it was weird. "It's only temporary," my mom said, like she was smoothing it over. "You'll stay in the guest room this time." They moved on quickly. I didn't. My old room, the only space in that house that ever felt mine, was off limits, blocked. Just like that. No warning. They didn't explain. I didn't ask. I followed them to the guest room like it didn't matter, even though it did. The guest room was mostly a folded-up couch and a weird smell that hadn't been there before. There was a blanket, but no pillow, no lamp, no closet. I sat down, and the springs pushed back harder than I expected. "This okay?" my mom asked. "Yeah," I said. It wasn't. The rest of the evening passed quietly. We had dinner. No one said much. They asked about school. I answered. My dad talked about gas prices. My mom laughed at something, but I can't remember what. It was like we were all reading from a script no one cared about anymore. I went to bed early, or at least I tried. I stared at the ceiling. The room was cold. My back hurt. There was a weird noise in the wall. Maybe pipes, maybe something alive. I kept thinking about the door, why it was blocked, what could possibly be inside. And I know, it sounds small, but it didn't feel small. It felt wrong. I got up sometime after midnight. I didn't check the clock, just needed to see it, needed to know. The hallway was dark, quiet. I walked slowly, like I was afraid of waking someone, or maybe of what I'd find. The boxes were gone, the ones that were stacked in front of my door earlier. They were just gone. I stood there, staring. Then I tried the handle. It was locked. My room never had a lock. Not growing up. Not ever. Not even when I begged for one in high school. I stood there longer than I should have. Then I remembered the hiding spot. Back hallway, behind the laundry shelf. That's where they always kept the spare keys. I went there, reached behind the panel, and sure enough, there was a key. New, shiny, taped in the usual spot. I don't know what I expected. Maybe that it wouldn't be there. Maybe that I'd chicken out. I didn't. Back at the door, I slid the key in, turned it. It clicked open. I took a breath. Then I opened the door. It smelled different, like dust and something else. like the air hadn't moved in weeks. I stepped inside. I saw what was in there, and I stopped. Everything in my body stopped. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't some random storage box or old furniture or a pile of winter coats. It was exactly what I didn't want it to be. 5 minutes later, I was outside, calling 911. I didn't knock on their door. I didn't tell them I knew. I just waited for the police to show up. I didn't look back. Not yet. I didn't always know something was off. That's the dangerous part about certain families. They don't scream at you or lock you in a basement. They make pasta. They smile. They ask about school. They make it easy to convince yourself that the knot in your chest is your fault. Growing up, I would have said things were fine. Good even. I was the younger sister. Vivian was the older one, and the rules were pretty simple. She got to go first and I got to watch. Vivian had the louder voice, the better grades, the shinier hair. She wore blazers to school dances and pulled them off. She knew what she wanted from a young age. Journalism, probably travel, maybe a master's someday, and everyone around her just nodded and opened doors. I didn't mind mostly. I played music, kept my head down, learned how to disappear in plain sight. But even then, I noticed things. How Mom always made Vivian's favorite dessert, but forgot mine. How Dad would interrupt me mid-sentence to ask Vivian if she needed more water. How, when I once said, "I feel like she's your favorite," they both laughed like I'd just said something adorable and stupid.
"You're imagining it,"
Mom said.
"You're being dramatic,"
Dad added. I learned not to say it out loud again. It got clearer in college. Vivian had most of her tuition covered by Mom and Dad. Not all of it, but enough that she could intern over summers instead of working retail. I asked once if they could help me too, just a little, maybe a textbook or two, and Mom said, "We wish we could, sweetie," in a voice that made me feel like I'd asked for a Tesla. So I worked. Cafes, admin assistant gigs, a tutoring job I hated. Vivian, meanwhile, studied abroad in Florence and said it deepened her understanding of narrative. I deepened my understanding of overdraft fees. Now she's finishing her degree. She says she wants to take a year off before grad school to travel, decompress, see the world. She talks about it constantly like it's her life's work. Thailand, Morocco, the Galapagos. She says it'll make her a better writer. Maybe it will. What gets me is how excited my parents are. Like glowing. Full-on will make it happen energy. They've already started talking logistics, money, flights. I overheard them saying maybe Grandma could help. That part made me stop walking. Not help Vivian exactly. Just that when Grandma passes, they expect to use part of the inheritance to fund the trip. You know, since the money would be staying in the family. Grandma's 89. Still sharp. Still herself. Still alive. It was the when that got me. Like her death was just a pending transaction. What they don't get, what I haven't told them, and maybe never will, is that I'm not jealous of Vivian's plane tickets. I'm angry because of Grandma. Because we have something. A thing that no one else in the family even pretends to understand. Music. She played cello and piano, taught me both before I could reach the pedals. Her hands used to move like water. Mine tried to keep up. When I was 10, she let me sit beside her while she opened a locked cabinet I wasn't supposed to know about. Inside were instruments I didn't have names for. Violas with inlays, flutes with carved keys, a mandolin that looked like it belonged in a museum. She told me they'd been passed down, kept, never sold, played, but always with care. Years later, when I was home for a weekend, she told me they were meant for me. She didn't say it like it was a gift. She said it like it was a continuation, like she was handing over a language. I didn't tell anyone, not because it was secret, because it was sacred. But they found out, and they were pissed. I heard Dad first, late one night. "It's not fair to give it all to Rami." Mom agreed, said it should be split evenly, that those kinds of things belong to the whole family. They meant Vivian. Vivian, who doesn't play. Vivian, who once asked if the oboe was the goose-sounding one. I wanted to scream, but Grandma didn't back down. She said clearly that they weren't for sale, that she wasn't dead, that she had the right to decide what happened to her things. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Then the break-in happened. Grandma was in the hospital overnight. A small issue, they said, just a precaution. She came back the next day to find her back window smashed and the collection gone. All of it. She called me crying. I had never heard her cry before. Not at funerals, not when Grandpa died, not when she lost her best friend to cancer. But this broke her. "They're gone," she kept saying. "I thought I'd have time to show you." I tried to calm her down. I told her maybe the insurance would help. She said, "It's not about the money." I knew that. Of course I knew that. She got sick again 2 days later, hospitalized again, weaker this time. The doctors said stress was making it worse. I stayed with her, took time off, sat next to her bed while she slept in half-hour stretches. It wasn't the theft. It was what it took from her. The idea that something that had lasted generations had ended under her roof. I've never hated anyone more than I hated whoever did that. And then I found out who it was, because I opened that door. I walked into the room I wasn't supposed to walk into, and there they were. The cases, the instruments, all of them, lined up under a tarp, hidden in my childhood bedroom like some kind of cursed treasure. They were never stolen. They were moved. 5 minutes later, I was outside, breathing too fast, calling 911. The dispatcher said someone would be there soon. I wasn't sure what soon meant when it was past midnight on a quiet street where nothing ever happened. But I stayed outside anyway, not because I wanted to be brave or dramatic, just because I couldn't go back in. I didn't want to see the kitchen, or the hallway, or my parents asleep in their bed while Grandma was still hooked up to monitors because of what they did. I stood near the mailbox, my jacket only halfway zipped. I kept touching my phone like it would make time move faster. Every few minutes I looked at the house. All the lights were still off except for the porch. It looked normal from the outside. Everything did. Which was kind of the point, wasn't it? The patrol car pulled up 28 minutes later. I counted. No lights, no sirens, just a quiet engine and the crunch of tires against the curb. 2 officers got out, one older, one younger. Neither of them looked surprised to find me standing outside in the cold, holding my phone like it was the only thing keeping me upright.
"You the caller?"
The older one asked. I nodded. They didn't ask why I was outside, just listened while I told them, calmly and clearly, what I'd found. The instruments, my childhood room, the break-in that wasn't. I told them about Grandma, the hospital, the insurance claim. I told them the whole story in a voice that didn't sound like mine. They asked if I wanted to stay anonymous. I shook my head. "I don't care anymore." They nodded like they'd seen that before. Maybe they had. One of them stayed with me. The other walked up to the house and rang the bell. It took a minute. Then I saw lights flick on, one by one. Upstairs first, then the hallway, then the front entry. My dad opened the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt. His hair was sticking up on one side. He looked confused, not panicked, not guilty, just tired and confused. My mom appeared behind him, pulling on a sweater. She looked even more confused than he did. I couldn't hear what was being said. The officer kept his voice low. I watched from the sidewalk, not hiding, just staying out of the way. It felt strange to watch them from that distance, like they were strangers in someone else's house. Eventually, both officers went inside. The door closed behind them. I stood there, arms folded, trying to stay warm. My feet were starting to ache from the cold. My hands had gone numb a while ago. I kept my eyes on the house. I didn't know what was happening inside. Didn't want to guess. Part of me expected yelling, footsteps, slammed doors, but it stayed quiet. Just shifting shadows behind the curtains, the occasional silhouette. Then nothing for a while. I thought about Grandma, what this would have done to her if she'd known, what it already had. 20 minutes later, a second vehicle pulled up. This one was different, larger, with an empty cargo area and protective lining inside. They were there for the instruments, the evidence. 2 more officers got out. They spoke briefly to the first pair, then disappeared inside. A few minutes later, they started bringing the cases out. They moved carefully, like they knew what they were carrying, like someone had told them the value wasn't just in numbers. I didn't move, just watched. The violin, the cello, the mandolin. Each one of them carried like it meant something. And then the front door opened again. My mom stepped out, scanning the yard. She looked right past me at first, then froze. Her eyes locked on mine. No words, no expression shift. Just that cold, silent recognition. Then my dad stepped out behind her. They both stared. They didn't say a word. They didn't need to. I saw it in their eyes, what I'd done, what they thought I was now. Betrayer, backstabber, stranger. I didn't break eye contact. I just let it sit. Eventually, one of the officers walked back over.
Everything's been cataloged,
he said.
We're just finishing the report.
I nodded. My bag's still inside, I said. I don't want to go in alone.
Of course.
He walked with me. Inside, everything was quiet. The guest room hadn't changed. My bag was already packed. I grabbed it, didn't look around. My parents stood in the hallway watching. Still nothing from them. Not a word. I didn't look at them when I walked out. Didn't need to. Outside, the last instrument case was being loaded. The second vehicle's door shut. Papers signed. One final clipboard pass between officers. Then it was over.
Do you have somewhere to go?
One of them asked. I shook my head. Can you take me to the hospital? I asked. He nodded. I got in the back seat, closed the door behind me. We pulled away in silence. I didn't turn around. Didn't have to. They dropped me off at the hospital just after 6. I had my bag with me. No plan, though. I just walked in and asked what floor she was on. Grandma was still in her room, still alive, still hooked up to too many things, but awake. She looked up when I came in and smiled like nothing had happened. I sat next to her bed, took her hand, said, "They found the instruments." She closed her eyes and breathed out. "Thank God," she said. I didn't tell her who took them. I didn't say where they were, just that they were safe. That was enough. She squeezed my fingers. "I wanted you to have them," she said. "That was the whole point." "I know." She rested her head back, said nothing else. A nurse came in after a while, checked vitals, smiled. "If she stays calm," she said, "she'll recover." I stepped outside around 7:30. My phone was already buzzing. 47 missed calls, more texts, more voicemails. Mom, Dad, Vivian, repeat. While I was staring at the screen, it lit up again. It was Mom. I answered. Her voice came in loud and fast. "How could you do this to us?" I didn't respond. "You called the police. You humiliated your own parents. You've ruined everything." "You hid the collection," I said. "You told Grandma it was gone. You filed a false claim."
"She's fine," Dad cut in. "She didn't die."
"She could have." There was silence on the line. Then Mom again. "We are your family. You don't do this to your family. You don't do that to Grandma. You've always been ungrateful," she said, voice shaking. "Always twisting everything, making yourself the victim." "I'm not the victim. She is." "You're not our daughter anymore," she said. I stayed quiet. Then Dad muttered something low.
"She's old anyway."
It slipped out. I don't think he meant to say it out loud. I felt something shut off in my chest. "You were counting on her dying," I said. That's what this was. Neither of them denied it. I hung up, blocked both numbers. Vivian called 10 minutes later. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Her tone was different, like she was trying to sound calm and failed. "I heard what you did," she said. "I did what was right. You called the cops on your own parents. They committed insurance fraud. They almost killed Grandma." "Oh, come on," she said. "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that. We just needed the money. It's not like anyone was hurt. Grandma was hurt. She's old." There it was again. "You're really going to throw away the whole family over this?" she asked. I didn't say anything. "Rummy, you've always been dramatic. You act like the world's out to get you, but..." I ended the call. Blocked her too. I sat down on a bench outside the hospital. No family, no more noise. Just air. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I didn't feel free or brave or strong. I felt done. They made their choices, and I made mine. It's been 6 months. I haven't heard a word from them, and I haven't sent one either. The last update came from my cousin. Quiet voice. Quick text. "They pled guilty. Sentenced today. 1 year of house arrest, 400 hours of community service, felony convictions. Both of them. They wear ankle monitors now. Can't leave the house unless it's for trash pickup or food bank shifts. It's public. Everyone knows. They walk past neighbors who used to wave and now cross the street. No one visits. They're not invited anywhere. They stood in court and read an apology. Not to Grandma, she wasn't there, but to the room, the judge, the record. No family showed up. Not even Vivian. She vanished online for a while, then came back pretending it never happened. A new profile picture, some quote about inner peace, comments turned off. Like if she controlled the narrative hard enough, the truth might forget her name. Grad school? Postponed. The big trip? Never happened. Last I heard, she's back at home. Not working, not posting, not planning much of anything. And me? I'm not watching. I'm done. Grandma turned 90 last week. She's home. She's healthy. She's sharper than half the people I know in their 30s. We threw her a birthday party, small but full. Her closest friends came, the ones who never stopped calling even when she was sick. A few of her old music students showed up too. Some of them brought their kids. I guess they wanted those kids to meet the woman who taught them to play like the music meant something. She wore her good cardigan, the one with the pearl buttons, and laughed the whole afternoon. Not polite laughing, real laughing. I hadn't heard it like that in years. The instruments were there too. They're hers again, out of hiding. No longer evidence in a locked-up case file. We set them up in the corner of the room, more for presence than performance. I figured no one would touch them. But around 5 o'clock, when the light shifted just right through the curtains, Grandma stood up from her chair and walked across the room. She didn't ask. She didn't wait. She sat down at the piano like the keys had been calling her. Everyone went quiet. And then she played. Not a full piece. Just enough to make your chest tighten and your throat do that thing it does when you're trying not to cry in public. She played like she was still 60, like the last year hadn't taken anything from her. Afterward, one of her friends said, "90 looks good on you." Grandma smiled and said, "Might have another decade in me if no one tries to kill me again." The whole room laughed, but I didn't, because I believed her. She's 90, and she's still here, still playing, still sharp. Some people think age is permission to stop seeing someone, that once you hit a number, you become optional, easy to write off. But no one gets to decide how long someone has left just because it's more convenient for them. Grandma might live to 95, or 100, or 105. I'm not counting. I'm just showing up. She doesn't talk about my parents anymore, or Vivian. Neither do I. The instruments are back, the music is back, and that's enough. Did I go too far, or not far enough? Comment your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe.